An upper tribunal judge has allowed a family of Gazans to settle in the UK, potentially opening the floodgates, under a scheme that was designed to allow Ukrainian refugees to settle in the UK. Now, it appears from the short snippet on Prime Minister's questions, which I'll come back to in a moment, that Keir Starmer agrees with Kemi Badenoch that this was the wrong decision. Although, respectfully, I think he could have been a little bit clearer in the way that he said it, because when he refers to decision, I think he's referring to two decisions in the same breath. The original decision of the Home Office, which refused them permission to stay, which was made under the previous government, and he sort of used that as a sniping point against Kemi Badenoch, which is one reason I don't like politics, but also the decision of the upper tribunal, which he says is wrong, and that he agrees that is wrong. So ostensibly, he doesn't think that this is the right decision, and they've already apparently taken steps, or are taking steps, to close this quote-unquote loophole, his words not mine, that might allow other Gazans to settle in the UK under the same scheme. That's just the introduction, so I'll go through a little bit of that with you in this video, and another snippet is that they also spent over £1 million on a flight that sent just 47 migrants in this country that had no right to be here, and a few other things. So I hope you'll stick around for those as well. First of all, if you're new to me, I'm Daniel Shensmith, the Barrister of England and Wales. Please do subscribe to the channel. I would humbly hope that I'm becoming a small but regular feature in your lives to bring you snippets of law from an objective standpoint. If that's the case, please do subscribe to the channel. That's the only thing I ask of you. About half of you still don't, but here we are. Thank you very much for doing that. So let's take a look here, shall we? So the report from Sky News includes this snippet, so I'll link it below for full credit, but this very, very short snippet here is where there's a bit of confusion in Keir Starmer's language, at least the way I interpret it. I think there's a bit of confusion because when he refers to decision, he says the decision was taken under the last government, which was correct because it was the Home Office of May last year, which was the previous government, but that was the decision to refuse this family of Gazans to settle in the UK. However, when he said the decision was wrong, I think he was talking about the upper tribunal decision being wrong, because he then went on to say that they're taking steps to close the loophole. Have a listen to it and let me know what you think.
However, a family of 6 from Gaza have applied to live in Britain using this scheme, and a judge has now ruled in their favour. This is not what the scheme was designed to do. This decision is completely wrong.
And so that's why, just pausing there, that's why I say the decision that's in discussion here really should be the decision of that judge. The decision to allow them to stay was wrong. And that's why there's confusion. You'll get it in a minute.
Cannot be allowed to stand. Is the government planning to appeal on any points of law? And if so, which ones?
Minister. Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. I do not agree with the decision. She's right. It's the wrong decision.
And so just pausing there, he said he doesn't agree with the decision. She's right. It's the wrong decision. Presumably talking about the upper tribunal's decision. But then he confuses the point. Listen to this.
She hasn't quite done her homework because the decision in question was taken under the last government.
And so then decision, I think he's talking about another decision, the Home Office decision taken under the last government. That was their refusal to stay.
According to the legal framework of the last government. But, Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. It should be Parliament that makes the rules on immigration. It should be the government that makes the policy. That is the principle, and the Home Secretary is already looking at the legal loophole which we need to close in this particular case.
And so is that a clear message from Sir Keir Starmer that they are taking steps to close this quote-unquote loophole, his words not mine, that has ostensibly allowed a family of Gazans to stay in the UK, despite the fact that they originally applied referring to the Ukrainian settlement scheme? And as I'll refer to the upper tribunal in a minute, it didn't really matter whether that scheme applied. In fact, let's jump to that right now. So just a bit of a warning here. If you do look into this, there is an anonymity direction. So finding out and publishing anything to do with the people involved in this case may lead to contempt of court. So there's my warning. Go and read it in full. You've been warned. So let's look at the overall conclusion here. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I will link it below if I find the actual link for it. But the overall decision says as follows. Having addressed all of the considerations identified by the parties as being relevant to the proportionality exercise and attributing varying degrees of weight to each, we conclude that the respondents, i.e. the Home Office refusal, of their collective human rights claim does not, on the particular facts of these cases, there were multiple cases for each of the individuals in question, strikes a fair balance between the appellant's interests, the appellants being the families, and those of the public. On a cumulative basis of all those things, the weight we attach to the considerations weighing on the appellant's side of the scales demonstrates a very strong claim indeed. Put another way, there are very compelling or exceptional circumstances. We reiterate a point made in our remaking decision. Even if the absence of a resettlement scheme were a relevant consideration, the weight we would have attached to it would have made no material difference to our overall conclusion on the proportionality exercise. Accordingly, the appellant's appeals are allowed. Now, I do think it's important to look at what the upper tribunal said about this resettlement scheme, which it did so at paragraphs 148 and 149. It says, Mr. Thomas submitted that in the absence of a resettlement scheme for Palestinians in Gaza was a significant consideration, thereby effectively urging us to adopt the judge's approach at first instance. He described the consequence of allowing the appellant's appeals as representing a leap in terms of the UK's obligations to admit certain families in the context of extraordinary situations such as the conflict in Gaza. We reject that submission, said the upper tribunal. In our error of law decision, we concluded that the absence of a resettlement scheme was irrelevant, should have been treated as being of neutral value, and should not have been double counted, paragraphs 92 to 95. We reiterate that conclusion here, and it follows that at the remaking stage we regard the absence of the scheme as adding nothing to the respondent's side of the scales. So, in other words, the upper tribunal said it doesn't matter that this scheme was not designed for people living in Gaza. It doesn't matter that the Ukrainian scheme was designed for Ukrainians, which, with respect to the tribunal, I find a bit odd. And I also found it a bit odd that it said that the absence of a resettlement scheme was irrelevant and should be treated as neutral value. As Sir Keir Starmer put it, with which I agree, he said it's Parliament that makes the rules, Parliament that makes the law, and the courts should follow it. And this does indeed appear to be a loophole that allows the upper tribunal to effectively make a decision which is outside of the confines of what would otherwise have been permitted by Parliament. And so ultimately, in his own words, Keir Starmer said they are now working to close that loophole and take steps to make sure this doesn't happen again. And undoubtedly, that would open the floodgates. Now, I'm not giving an opinion on whether or not they are deserving of protection or not. This is just how the law works. And ultimately, I agree with Sir Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch that this decision was wrong. Now, believe it or not, there may actually be evidence that Keir Starmer and his Home Office are taking steps to curb illegal migration, despite having recently, reportedly, according to The Telegraph, spent £1 million on a private jet to take only 47 Albanians out of the country. More about both of those in just a moment. Don't go away. Just as an aside, you might know by now that I'm the kind of guy that likes to have my stuff together. So I like things to work. I like that when you buy something, it just does what it's supposed to do and there's no fuss. And so I will be traveling this year for the first time in quite some time, actually out of the country. And when I do so, I'm going to use Saily, because I've partnered with Saily because I've tested it out when my son went abroad just recently, and my own mobile phone provider absolutely let us down. It just wouldn't connect when he got there. Despite the promises that it was going to work, it just didn't work. But that was not the case with Saily when he went the second time, because Saily is affordable eSIM data. When you're traveling around the world, you don't need a little plastic SIM to put in your phone. You just download the app, you buy a package for the destination you're going to, and it will activate immediately, automatically upon arrival, and it will give you seamless and safe and secure access to the internet. So I will be using that when I travel later this year, and I'll still be doing videos, so you won't have to miss out on my videos daily, hopefully daily. But when you connect with Saily, it will not only connect you with affordable eSIM data around the world, but you can also expect the same security that you would get with NordVPN, which is a virtual location, ad blockers, web protection, and all of the security features you'd expect from NordVPN. So you can be sure that when you're traveling around, you will get safe and secure access to the internet. No risking connecting to public Wi-Fi's, whether that's in the airport or a public cafe or something like that. You'll have secure access. Now, of course, as a partner to my channel, I get you a discount using the code BlackBeltBarrister, which is 15% off any plan you choose to buy. You don't have to buy it straight away. You can download the app so that it's ready for when you travel. I've got it downloaded on my phone, but when you do want to buy a plan, you just open the app, you select the country of destination, you select the plan. Don't forget to use my code BlackBeltBarrister, which will apply the 15% discount for you, and then it will automatically activate when you arrive. If you are a business, there are business packages available as well, so you can contact them about that. It is a super affordable package for eSIM data. Now, I've even had people contact me that live abroad and travel around, have said that it is even cheaper than where they currently buy it from. So they now use Saily all the time, which I am very pleased about because it's genuinely helped somebody. So don't delay, download Saily today so you'll be ready when you travel abroad and get safe and seamless, worry-free, stress-free access to the internet. And thank you to Saily for sponsoring this video. Now back to these issues, and I'll say at the outset that I can't really see how this is sustainable if we have many thousands of people in the UK illegally, that it costs £1 million to charter a jet which could carry 321 people, only take 47 illegal Albanian migrants and convicted criminals out of the country back to their home country. This, according to The Telegraph. I'll link this below as well. But this is what they say. But then that leaves an estimated cost of returning each of these individuals of £22,000. Now, I don't know what the current flight costs are, but I suspect you could travel business class probably most places in the world for less than that. And I don't think we should be sending them business class. But nonetheless, the estimated cost, £22,000 per deportee, based on using an aircraft contracted from a private airline to remove 50 people, fewer than 50 people, with no right to remain in the UK, according to a Home Office impact assessment on enforced returns to safe countries. Now, a step in the right direction, but an expensive one at that. But there's more. Sky News also reports, although there is a little bit of a sort of caveat to this, a little bit of a loophole in this itself. So I'll tell you what this is, and then I'll explain why I think there's a loophole. Sky News report that migrants arriving illegally in small boats and in lorries are to be refused British citizenship. This with new guidance, which again suggests that the Home Office is taking steps to curb unlawful migration. Now, let me move to this document here, which is the British citizenship good character requirement for nationality, which is version 5 and been updated and published for Home Office staff usage on the 10th of February, 3 days ago at the time of recording. Now, the important bit of this is the bit that's changed, and conveniently, it says changes from the last version of this guidance. Changes to clarify that applications made after the 10th of February 2025 that include illegal entry will normally be refused citizenship, regardless of when the illegal entry occurred. Which is an interesting thing in itself, because law is not normally retrospective. But I suppose because a decision will be made after the date of publication of this document, which is the going forward bit, it doesn't matter when they arrived in the UK. So that bit is retrospective. So if they arrived several years ago and they make an application after the 10th of February, if they arrived illegally, they'll normally be refused citizenship, which is all a little bit strange, because if you remember the video I did on the Border Security, Asylum and Immigration Bill, which some people just read the title and think that that is strengthening border security and all those kind of things. Not quite the case, because you remember from that video, it talked of the repeal of certain bits of the Illegal Migration Act 2023, huge swathes of it, in fact, removing sections which included sections 30 to 51, repealing these sections, and those sections talking about persons prevented from obtaining British citizenship. In essence, it reopened the pathways to citizenship for those people that were here. In essence, it reopened those pathways to British citizenship for those that entered the UK illegally. However, the guidance now doesn't say that. The guidance now says the opposite. The guidance now says that changes mean that those entering the UK illegally will normally be refused citizenship on this good character assessment for the British citizen requirement. However, again, it's not quite that simple. It never is. So now we look at another section, which is potentially a bit of a loophole. Now, you might remember the other video I did about deporting somebody and that was refused because the child didn't like chicken nuggets outside of the country. Well, there's always a bit of a loophole like that, especially when children are concerned. I mean, rightly so in many respects, but sometimes I think it can be used as a loophole. And I'm talking about this bit here, which considers the best interests of a child. Now, I think we can all agree for the vast majority of occasions, the best interests of a child should come into play. But, as I said, loophole, potentially. It says here, the duty in Section 55 of the Borders, Citizenship and Immigration Act 2009, which gives rise to promote the welfare under Article 3 of the UN Convention on the Rights of a Child, means that the consideration of the child's best interests must be a primary consideration in nationality decisions affecting them. This guidance forms part of the arrangements for ensuring that we give practical effect to these obligations. It goes on to say decision makers must carefully consider all information and evidence provided in an application concerning the best interests of a relevant child, i.e. the child of someone we're trying to deport or not give citizenship to. That is a person who is under the age of 18 at the date of the application, and it's evident from the information provided that the applicant that they will be affected, the child will be affected by the decision made on behalf of the applicant. So if someone applies for citizenship, there's a decision going to be made. If they have a child, the child's interests come first. So whilst ordinarily they should be refused citizenship if they arrived in the UK illegally, if that's not the case and they are making a decision that affects the child, this makes it absolutely clear that consideration of the child's best interest must be a primary consideration in nationality decisions affecting them. Now, to put this bluntly, I like to put things bluntly. This is an objective observation. What I think will happen, certainly based on the upper tribunal decision with relation to the Gazan family, what I think is likely to happen is those that have children are obviously now going to submit lots of information about that child and how they'll be affected if they don't get citizenship, and that will be the primary consideration, regardless of what the rest of the guidance says. And I also think it will encourage those to have children or bring children here somehow, and then the decision affects the child. And so this will take primary consideration. So, as I said, loophole. I think that is going to be used and abused. I mean, there are going to be situations where it is correctly used, but I do also think there will be situations where it's abused. But such as it is, and that is a very real likelihood. So there's plenty more to talk about, but I'm sure this video has gone on long enough now. So do subscribe. There's a few other stories I want to bring to you and detail, but I'll keep those in a separate video. So please do like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. And as always, thank you for watching.